I would like to welcome you today. My name is Kathy Williams. I am a principal and senior wealth strategist at Waddell & Associates. I have worked here for 28 years and they've been wonderful years. I've actually been in the business for 40 years. I did start when I was 3. I was a prodigy. It's amazing. I'm also an EMT and have been so for 30 years. I currently volunteer my time with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office Emergency Services, which I enjoy doing tremendously. So today's webinar is going to be about a topic that nobody likes, but we need to take care of it. I'm dead. Now what? So things to do before I can't. First things first, I'm going to show you a disclaimer slide. This is something that I am doing to make T. Meeks in our office. She's the Chief Compliance Officer, and I want to make her happy. So if you are watching this on a replay, you can always pause now and read this fully. I, however, am going to move on. So we have all been inundated so much since the pandemic started with the news and uncertainty over the last 2 months. It's just been incredible. What if the market goes up? What if the market goes down? Where will there be a second wave? Will there ever get to be a vaccine? Will I ever see sports again? I need the Tigers to be playing. What if my kids never go back to school? So today we're going to talk about something that is certain, and that certainty is at some point we are all going to die. Besides taxes, that is the only sure thing out there. I am going to tell you the story. By the way, I'm in heaven right now. This is where my heavenly place is at the beach. So I just kind of wanted to set the stage for that. Being an EMT, we always share war stories, and each one of us probably at some point would like to think that they would have a moment in time where they can be a hero to somebody. Make it to the news, that would even better. So here is my story, and I'm going to tell you all of the stuff that I need to do because I have just died. I have just succumbed to my injuries from saving 25 children from drowning at the lake. I am a hero and will be a legend to many, but gosh, what happens now? Of course, being what I do, I have everything. It will fall into place. I've thought of it all before this terrible accident. Or have I? I don't think Kermit thinks that I have. So first in line, who should be called? My beautiful kids? Absolutely. My sweet, handsome boyfriend? You bet. I know that many of you are aware, but there is an overall for the emergency people to know that in your phone, if you have ICE in front of somebody's name, that stands for in case of emergency. So of course I would have ICE in here by my kids' names and by my boyfriend's name. Who else would be called? Well, close family and friends. That always happens. That's the next layer out. They can help spread the word, which would make it so much easier for my kids. So who else? What should I do before I can't? I will go through my address book for the answers of all of the people that I need to contact. This will remind me of who I need to contact, especially since I can read my own handwriting. It makes it much easier for me to come up with this list. I will list all of the important people to call as well as the reason to call them. So who else should be on this list? Well, first of all, I know this seems a little bit morbid, but the funeral home. Once I succumb to my injuries, my body will have to go somewhere. And so that would be a funeral home. So you want to make sure that you have the funeral home of choice or of record listed, and you need to have your social security number listed alongside of that because that's super important for the funeral home to be able to process. Sorry to be so morbid, but it is one of the most important things that you have to do. So secondly, who should be on the list? My wealth strategist at Waddell & Associates. She knows everything. Well, technically I can't say that because of compliance reasons. T would get mad at me, but she really is smart. So who else should be on the list? Well, my attorney, the one who wrote my estate documents, my CPA, the one who has prepared all of my tax returns through the years. Technically, they should know where all of the skeletons are buried. The insurance company. Well, if I have final expenses that need to be paid for, if I have debts that need to be paid for, it would be important to start the process of having the insurance policy enacted. And if I'm lucky, I have a policy that will pay off my house or both of them. I don't know. So once we've called the important initial people, what happens? Well, we need to fend off the media coverage of my heroics. I know it's going to be hard for my kids, but we're going to have to do this. So what's the next thing that my peeps need to know? And my peeps are everybody, my executor, my family, the whole works. Well, they need to know all of me. And I believe there's a song, something like that. But in this particular case, they need to know everything about my financial life. My assets, which are everything that I own. My liabilities, which is everything that I owe. And my income, everything that I earn or receive. So assets, what should I do before I can't? Well, I should have a record of what I own, where I own them, and how they are owned, the registration. So this is my beautiful house. I was very lucky, got into a great neighborhood here in Memphis. My cars, well, I have a Honda, and I believe that's what George is driving right now. My yacht, well, okay, it's a pontoon boat, but I feel like he does on my pontoon boat, so we're just going to call it my yacht. So what other assets? Well, we start getting super important. My investments, my cash, my checking, my savings. These are my dollars, that which is readily available. My employee benefits, and at this moment, I'd like to thank Waddell & Associates for everything they have given me in employee benefits. So what types would that be? 401k plan, obviously, pretty much everybody has a 401k plan. And I need to also make sure that I know who the beneficiaries are and that they're written out. Pension plans, which are, if we're lucky, are the ones that pay you monthly income. You have options whenever you make those pension declarations. So you want to know who the beneficiary of that is. Do I have restricted stock or stock options? Are they worth anything? If they are, all of that will come into my estate. So we need to have a record of those. Deferred compensation, which is a way of deferring certain bonus or type transactions until after I retired. That is included in my estate. A health savings account. For those of you who have carried high deductible healthcare plans, you know that health savings accounts are a way that you can put money away to pay for medical expenses. Well, if you have a spouse, you can leave your spouse as a beneficiary and they get to take over the health savings account the exact same way. So it's always good to record the beneficiary in that particular case. Do I have any ownership of the company? And if that's the case, that opens an entire Pandora's box of information, and that would be addressed at some other time. This is not the time to go into that. So life insurance. So, you know, there's multiple types of life insurance. You can have term, you can have whole life, whatever the case may be. So it's good to know what type it is, but once I die, it's just important to know who the beneficiary is. You can see there's a repeated theme through this, as that knowing who the beneficiary is on all of these assets. So there's probably a ton more assets, but those are the biggies. So let's move on to liabilities. So what should I do about liabilities before I can't? I should have a record of what I owe, how much I owe, and to whom I owe it, and all payment information. Now, my hope is that I, or any of y'all, that none of us have very much in the way of liabilities. But what could those potentially be? My mortgage, or 2, or 6, however many homes that you have, including a HELOC if you happen to have one, my car loan, or the loan for the incredible bed I bought. And the reason I put that in there is because I found it very interesting. I have talked to at least 3 different people over the last 4 months that have paid $5,000 or more for a bed. I had no idea you could do that. I understand they're wonderful, but a lot of times those are financed. So I just wanted to bring into account that. Maybe the flooring I just put in my house. Anything that I have taken out a loan for, I need to have that information available for my family. All of my credit card information, even if I don't have a balance, it's super important that any credit card that you have in your name, even without a balance, be known so that when I pass, they will be able to cancel all of my credit cards. Otherwise, there could be the potential for hacking or fraudulent activity on those. Other liabilities. Well, these are not definitive liabilities as in a lump sum, but these are ongoing, recurring bills that I pay. Utilities, of course, lawn care for the summer house. I have it as well for the Memphis house, but the summer house guy right there was just too much and I had to put him in here. He's super enthusiastic. What else do I have? Insurance premiums, and there's so many. Life, health, dental, supplemental, pontoon boat, jet skis, as you can see here. I think that's a mullet, but you know, again, I can't really insure against mullets. Mobile phones, internet, TVs, those are all things that we pay. So not only do we need to know what regular bills or recurring bills that we pay, but we need to know how they pay, how I pay them, so that they will know what to look at. So are they auto deducted from my checking account, which quite a few of mine are. The reason that matters is because if I don't have any income coming in, it could be that they're going to deduct out of an account that doesn't have any money. So you certainly want to know to notify them of my passing. Are they charged to my credit card? I do love points. I know a lot of people have miles, points, cashback, whatever it is that you like to use. But if they're charged to the credit card, that needs to be known because you want to make sure that those credit card bills get paid, or my family needs to do that. Do I write a check? I actually use bill pay a lot in mine, so I write very few checks, but again, one other source of how you would pay these recurring bills. Then as a last resort, I ask my kids for money. That's only on a bad day, and I promise you that's the reaction that I get from my kids when I ask them for money. So we've gone over assets, we've gone over liabilities, money, check. Now we need to talk about income. What should I do before I can't? I should have a record of when I get my income, from whom I receive, how much I get, and where it goes. Now, all of this will potentially change at my death, but the records need to be there. So my W&A salary, as much as W&A likes me, I don't believe that they will continue to pay my salary after my death. My Social Security benefit. Now that's assuming I'm a hero after age 67, because I plan to not take early Social Security benefits. If I have a spouse, that'll come into play. If I don't have a spouse, then of course my Social Security benefit will go by the wayside. My pension or annuity payments, because of the fact that you can choose different options on payouts for pensions and annuity payments, you need to know who the beneficiaries are and whether or not there will be some left to inherit. You can do sometimes a time certain, like a 5-year or a 10-year certain, or you can just do a single life. All of that will come into play as to what happens to the benefits after I pass. Do I have rental income? Well, notice there were no rental homes listed on my list of assets, but if I show a record of rental income, then there must be some place that I'm getting that from. That will probably continue after my death, but will be going to a different place than me. Am I a trust fund baby? If only, but that didn't happen for me. So if you have a trust fund and you're receiving income from it, of course the income won't come to you, but there will be places that may or may not receive the ongoing income. Just one more thing to keep a record of. Am I receiving royalties? I have absolutely no creative genes in my body. It would never happen to me, but some of you out there may have the capability or are lucky enough to receive royalties. If so, those may pass on to your estate and to your beneficiaries. Am I receiving director's fees? My guess would be that if I'm on the board of directors for a large company, that once I am no longer there, I will not receive the director's fees, but it's just a good thing to have a record of so that my family will know and can check. Alimony, of course, alimony will go away as soon as I pass away. Child support, that's going to be a very murky area. You would assume that if I have minor children, they would go to my ex-spouse. If that's not the case, then it would become completely murky, but would be something that my family would need to know about. So money check, we've got the assets, we've got the liabilities, we've got the recurring bills. So what else should I do before I can't? Well, now that I've spent what seems like years getting my financial life recorded, what is next? Where is all of the information and how does my family get to it? Apparently, there's more work to do. So what should I do before I can't? For me personally, everything I do online or in a password protected program or kept in a safety deposit box. So see where I'm going with this? I have to have a record of my user IDs and my passwords. As I go through this, you'll want to think about each of these items that I have up there to think whether or not you actually want your beneficiaries or your family members accessing this. So on the left side, you'll see the computer. Once it goes to sleep and you have to put in a password to get back in, unless they know the password, an administrator is going to have to get in there. Potentially they may have to pull the hard drive out to get some information, but it's not a pleasant thing to do. So if you have a personal computer, certainly have your password written somewhere. In the middle, you'll see Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and to the right, you'll see LinkedIn. Well, that's social media. I do not do a ton of posting on social media, but I certainly would not want someone with a really terrible sense of humor to be able to get to any of these and start posting wild, crazy, or funny is okay, but wild, crazy, or ugly things. So we would want to have the passwords, user ID and passwords for those where they can be turned off. You'll see the iTunes icon next to Facebook. iTunes is very dear to me. I am not one that will go online and pay for Spotify or pay for Pandora. I just want to own the songs that I like. And so I have a very large iTunes collection. And so as we all know about Apple, Apple is very tight in their construction of this. And so if I don't have my user ID and my password available for my beneficiaries, basically that whole zillion record collection will go by the wayside. Email to the right. Email is very important that you keep cleaned up. It's also a really good place for your family to go and look for information about people that maybe they need to notify about potential assets that I might have forgotten about, or maybe that's how they send me the notice that I won the lottery. I have no idea. But anyway, it's a good idea to keep it cleaned up and have that information available to your beneficiaries, your family members. Credit cards, again, a lot of times you're going to go online and do the credit card information. I download and keep my statements on a protected drive. But that would be good if someone needs to go in there and figure out if I might have missed something in the prep work that I did prior to that. And of course, the iPhone, as we all know, Apple don't play about opening up an iPhone. So if you want people to be able to access your iPhone, you certainly need to either leave a password or somehow leave your thumbprint. I do have one of the older ones that goes by my thumbprint. So digital, got that, a lot of digital. So what else do I need to do or to have? So here comes the attorney, what the attorney has done for me, my estate planning documents. So do I have my pre-death documents? Now that covers a small portion of time in this presentation, from when I got sick at the lake trying to save those children until I have to move to the funeral home. So that would cover my healthcare power of attorney, my living will, and my advance directive, any or all of those. Would also cover my durable financial power of attorney. So that could be very important to have for the family member who has your power of attorney. Also, Next, I would want to have my estate transition documents. So now that I'm officially dead, my will will come into play, along with any changes or codicils, or what they're called, that I made maybe when I was mad at the kids. I don't know. A trust document, any trust document that I might have, along with any amendments. See the last point about why I may make those. And my pre and post nuptial agreement if my hunky boyfriend and I get married. And I'm not making any announcements today. Do not think that. Then there are other things that can coincide with the estate planning documents. So you have wills, you have trust, you have TODs and PODs, and there's reasons to have all of these. So I look at it, what can I do to make it easier on my family to administer my estate? So TOD stands for transfer on death, and POD stands for pay on death. Either one of those would apply to a bank account, would apply to my 401k plan or my IRA account. I can add it to my regular brokerage account at most firms. And what that does is that will directly pay to those beneficiaries once they have a death certificate, whatever is in those accounts. And what that does is it keeps it out of probate. And that's a very, very wonderful thing because it allows them to access money without having to go to court. Wills are something that everybody has and should have. That will definitely pick up anything that's listed in my name that does not have a beneficiary designation. And a trust. People ask me a lot, when should I have a will? When should I have a trust? The list can go on for days on why you should do one or the other. I'll give you one example of when a trust is super important. I have, when I call it my summer home, it's actually my weekend home, and it is a small little house at Pickwick Lake, and it is on the Mississippi side of Pickwick. My home here is in Tennessee. So if I just have a will, there will be a probate that will be opened in Tennessee, but then there has to be an ancillary probate that's opened in Mississippi in order to process the transfer of my Pickwick Lake house. So if I actually have a trust, then it doesn't have to go through probate, and my trustees will be able to take care of both houses without an issue. As I said, there's a lot we can go into about wills versus trust, TODs versus PODs, but that's kind of an overview of maybe trying to keep it a little simple. So what else do I need to do before I can't? I have to stay current with everything. Good thing that I have a great wealth strategist to remind me, and that is me. So I try and keep up on this so I can take care of myself. So what might affect my estate planning documents? Well, as we've all seen over the last 10 years, a change in tax law will do that. So the changes in the exemptions that you have, a change in the tax rates, all of these things come into play and may or may not require a change in my estate planning documents. Well, marriage, of course, would do it. If you are basically taking two and you're turning them into one unit, it would be something that, especially if you're bringing in children from a previous marriage, that you would want to look at changing your estate planning documents for, protecting children and protecting the current spouse. Conversely, the opposite, divorce, where you're taking one and you're going back to two. And so you, of course, will always want to make sure that your documents are re-looked at and changed based upon that situation. Children born after the documents were written, there's no problem with that for me. And most good estate planning attorneys will write into the estate plan something to the effect of it would take any natural born children that happen after this document is written. But keep in mind, would it cover if you actually decided you wanted to adopt a child? Is it considered the same thing? So there's lots of reasons. So if there is some child that comes through your life that needs to be added, that would be a time to revisit your estate planning documents. Someone else's death that may be a beneficiary of mine. For those of you who don't know me, well, I have two children. I have a son who has two daughters, and I have a daughter who has two sons. So we have this nice little rounded group. So if I have an IRA account and I just leave the assets, the beneficiaries are my son 50% and my daughter 50%. So something happens to my son. And so according to most, the surviving beneficiary would receive the entire amount, but that would totally exclude my son's two daughters. And same thing with my daughter, if she passed away, it would exclude her two sons. So you might want to consider adding per stirpes on there in order to have it last beyond the death of a beneficiary. If both of my children died at the same time, maybe they were helping me pull the kids out of the lake, it would conceivably come back into my estate. So we just need to look at when there's a death of a current beneficiary, do I need to make some changes to my estate planning documents? Another item that seems to be happening more and more are issues that come up with the beneficiary. You have a great plan. It was written out 20 years ago. Everybody was wonderful 20 years ago, and you run into issues. Say, I have a child with drug or alcohol issues. I have a child that has creditor issues, or a child with disability. So you would look at potentially having trusts that are set up to maintain these. And with trust, you have the ability, as you do with wills, but setting up trust via a will or setting up a trust outside of the will, you have the ability to direct what happens to the money under whatever circumstances you want to. It's limitless. Drug or alcohol issues, you could have a trust that's set up for this particular beneficiary that only gives out income and there is no access to the principal, but has the qualification that once these issues are resolved, that then they can become a full participant in their portion of the trust. Creditor issues. So it could be that you want to allow only income and there's no way, it's an irrevocable trust, and there's no way for the beneficiary to access the assets in there. So that will keep the creditors from coming knocking on the door. Disability, a child with a disability, and we have seen this quite a few times. Many children with disabilities will be entitled to receive SSI or SSDI, so that's Social Security benefits. And so if these children inherit funds directly, then some of these federal benefits will stop paying until all of that money is used up before they'll start paying again. If you set up a special needs trust and they're correctly done, then it's potential that the SSI or SSDI will continue to pay to the children, and the assets that you left to the child would be kept specifically for that child at things outside of what the benefits will pay for. So just a few things to keep in mind why you want to stay ahead of this. And my favorite, I win the lottery. Trust me, if I win the lottery, I'm going to redo my entire estate plan. Everything will change and we'll have a good time doing it. Whew, that's a lot of stuff that I need to do before I can't. A lot of stuff. So now that I've got the stuff, and it's a lot. I mean, I've lived a long time, gosh, what did I say, 42 years. So how long should I keep stuff? I do not agree with Teresa. I don't believe in just delete, delete, delete. So there are some parameters that you should use, keeping this in mind. So there are certain things. Forever is a bad idea for a lot of this because if you've ever been to some people's house, you can barely move into the room because there are so many stacks and stacks and stacks of documents. So you would definitely forever want to keep marriage certificates, birth certificates, and death certificates. You would want to keep your divorce papers. You would it would be important to keep your wills and other trust documents forever. And that is especially true if I win the lottery. If you have paid off a mortgage, you would want to keep that information, especially if you're in the house that you paid off. And papers on what I own for as long as I own them. Insurance, investments, property records, contracts. So how long should I keep stuff? Let's go to the not forever. So most documents, I think that you can feel comfortable shredding after 7 years. There are some that you can keep for a shorter period of time. And if you go online, you can see, well, do these for 1 year, do these for 2 years, do these for 5, do these for, I can't do that. That's too confusing. So in my pea brain, I believe if you just keep everything for 7 years outside of those forever documents, then shred each year as you get to the 8th year, and life will be a heck of a lot easier for you. Digital. I love digital. It is wonderful. I can keep lots of stuff in a small space. Just remember that you need to keep the password, because that little thing won't do you any good if it's password protected and you need a password to get into it. Well, also for me, I am a hoarder. Flash drives help me keep my house from looking like this. And I don't know about y'all, but periodically I go and watch the Hoarder Show just to make myself feel better about what my home or what my office looks like. So, extras. This is an extra thing about how can I be really, really, really nice to my family before I die. For me, this is one of the most important things that you can do. If you have minor children, please have enough insurance to take care of them until they fly the coop. College too, if you possibly can. For young people, it's very easy to get lots and lots of insurance. It's called term insurance for very small amounts of money. It is a wonderful way to ensure that there is money if you pass away to take care of those sweet, wonderful children. In addition, make sure that you have guardians in place that you trust and that like your kids, which is always helpful. Now, if there's, your spouse is still alive, then there's no issue. But if, both parents happen to pass away in an accident, then you're going to want to have the guardians in place. It saves fighting if there's family members that would like to fight over it. And if there's not family members, then it will help prevent your children from going into foster care, which would never be ideal. So this is one I've got to tell you that I have thought about, and there was a great story. David Waddell, the president and CEO of Waddell and Associates, his father passed away in 2015. A lot of y'all will remember Duke Waddell, his wife Clara, who's still alive. Duke wrote his eulogy out, and David was able to look at that and have great memories about what he wrote. Also, Duke was pretty succinct, and David did have to add to it, but it gave him a direction of where he should go with what he should say at his father's funeral. My family doesn't have to use it, but it might bring them peace, laughter, or tears, depending upon what I say. Even better, I can record a video that will hopefully be something they can cherish. And that is so much easier to do today than it was growing up. When I was growing up, nobody had, video cameras. When my kids were little, I had a camcorder that was like the size of a walrus that I had to carry around. And you just did not make videos like you do now. Now you have a cell phone, you have Zoom meetings, you have all kinds of cameras everywhere. You can make a very easy video that could be wonderful, wonderful for your family to go back and look at. I'll tell you, my dad passed away in 1997. He had a digital voice recorder for the home voicemail, and we kept it and continued to play it so we can just hear his one voice, that one voice answering the phone. I wish that I had a lot more videos that I could remember. I do have to give kudos to my daughter. She is wonderful about sending me videos of my grandchildren, and I still will go back and look at them. They're only 5 and 2, but I'll look at them whenever my 5-year-old was 2, and you see these great things, and it helps you remember stuff. So it's so easy to do. I really believe that everybody should do that for, posterity, if nothing else. Another one that is super important to me, and it's something that I have been through, and I'll tell you my war stories on this. I think it's really a wonderful thing to pre-plan and prepay for my funeral. It is not fun, there's no doubt about it, but it is certainly one of the best things I can do to allow my family to mourn without immediate financial fear. It also keeps my family from overspending on my funeral. So for example, my mother, she had Alzheimer's for about 10 years prior to her death. And about 2 months before she passed away, I was home after surgery. I had some extra time, and decided to go with my brother to take care of mom's funeral arrangements and prepay them. So I got to do it with the comfort of having my brother there in a time when I wasn't distraught and could go through and say, this looks like a good casket. This seems like that would be good. And just figure out the budget and then go ahead and pay for it. So it was over with. We did not know that 2 months later, my mother was going to pass away. It was incredible that all I had to do at the funeral home was to tell them what type of flowers I wanted to go on top of her casket. Other than that, the rest of my time was spent mourning, laughing, visiting with all of the family that came from out of town and all of the friends, and it made that so much easier for me. I totally encourage you to do that for your family. Additionally, and I know some things change, the funeral home won't bury or cremate me without getting paid or putting a lien on insurance. Understandable. When my dad died, it was a long time ago, it was in 1997, we knew that a lot of it had been paid for. I did not realize that it had not all been paid for. And as we sat around the funeral home and they tallied everything, they said, okay, well, we need $7,000. Well, that kind of shocked me. It was 1997 and part of the funeral had already been paid for. And so we all looked at each other and they said, well, we take credit cards. Luckily, I had a credit card that had enough free space on it to take care of that. But what if I hadn't? What if your kids don't have the ability? It takes a little while to get your insurance money. So think about it. Do this for your family. I think it's just incredibly important. I think that you should consolidate as much as you can. You should not have accounts at 20 different brokerage firms or banks. You may have had a reason for opening it so you could get some super points or you could get a good interest rate for a little bit of time. But once that's over with, consolidate. Get to as few accounts as you need to run your life. I should put as many of the items that I have mentioned in this presentation into one box. And I'll tell you something, if you can stick everything in a box and bring it to me, I can sort through that box like a buzzsaw. I know what I'm looking for. I know what I don't care about. A family member would have to go through and then go, I wonder if I need this. I wonder if this matters. I can tell immediately from a financial aspect what counts. So it's easier for me to do it than it is for your family. Here at Waddell & Associates, if you're a client of ours, we have a book that we will give you where you can record all of the information that we have talked about in this presentation, all of it. We also have the ability to scan important legal documents. We put them in a file that is backed up every day so that it's good and it's secure. We also have access to digital vault. So if you would prefer to upload your own documents, we can do that as well. We can allow you access to that as well. Personally, I use Quicken for a lot of my information as far as the assets and liabilities because it's something that I keep up with every day. It covers all of the financial side and it's just very helpful. Whatever works for you is fine. Just get it together and consolidate. It's super important to have a trusted person or two that is ready and able to help the family when the I'm dead now what moment comes, and make sure that your family knows who it is. T. Meeks in our office, we have known each other for 40 years. We are that for each other. So her kids know to come to me if something happens to her. My kids know to go to T if something happens to me. So it's very helpful, I think, to have that. And that one person they can go to and say, oh God, help me. And last but not least, I know that this sounds like a super daunting process, y'all. I really do understand it. But if you're a client of W&A, you have a strategist here to help you do what you should do before you can't. And if you don't have a strategist, you need to get one. Okay. That is all of my presentation for the moment. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions, which I hope that I can get to. So can I put the TOD or POD permission on all of my assets. Not all assets. You can on many accounts, but you can't on all assets. For example, you say your home, you know, you're going to register your home. You can register it in individual name. You could have another person on there as joint tenants, but it's really important to make sure you have the right joint tenants, because there's joint tenants with right of survivorship. And sometimes I've seen if the right of survivorship isn't in there, that it causes a problem whenever it comes to settling the estate. So it's pretty important to do that type of stuff. There's also tenants by the entireties. There's tenants in common. So there's lots of different things that you have. But for most brokerage firms, banks, things like that, you can have pay on death and TOD. When should I consider establishing a trust? There's a myriad of times to do that. And I think that's something that would be better spent with you talking to a strategist. So of course, if I have a child that becomes disabled, I will want to set up a special needs trust at that time. Do I have enough assets that are outside of the scope of being able to add a beneficiary where I would need to have a trust to do it? So I have a house in Mississippi and a house in Tennessee. Well, that's a good time to have a trust. Prior to that, I just had a house in Tennessee and my 401k assets, or whatever the case may be, something I have a beneficiary on other than my house. So a trust is not necessary for everything. A will can do a lot of the same things, and you can establish trust during in a will. The difference between a will and a trust is a will has to go through probate court. A trust allows for the assets that are in the trust to be handled outside of probate. So it's a private distribution. The wills are generally there to pick up things that are just in your name. And one of the problems that we see a lot is that once you establish a trust, you need to put assets in the trust, because just having it does nothing. If your house is not in the trust, if your bank's not in the trust, if none of your assets go into the trust, that was a waste of money to do. So this is one that from a technical standpoint and then from a personal standpoint, I'll answer. Is it necessary to have an attorney create my durable power of attorney or my healthcare power of attorney? My recommendation is to have an attorney help you with those. I believe that they help you think through all of the things that you want to do. For my mother, I actually did go online and download so that I could get something done before she devolved in her Alzheimer's. And so we did a very quick one for her. So I think you can do it. I would probably recommend that you go through an attorney to have one done. How can I get a W&A recording book that we mentioned? All you have to do is let me know and we will be able to send that out to you. We are at the end of the time that we can have for this. It has been wonderful spending this time with you. We will have a replay of this presentation going out to you at the end of the week. Please share with your friends and neighbors or anyone you think would like to know this information or you think could use this information. If you are not signed up for our email list, you can do it by sending a text message with the phrase "things to do" to 44222. This will prompt you to enter your email, and once done, you will receive content every week, including an invitation to next week's webinar hosted by our very own and talented Tim Ellis, who is just a brand new father. So thank you so much for attending, and I hope to talk to some of you very soon. Thank you.